the people of Kenya. Nikisoma mnaongeza energy kidogo. Sasa, we the people of Kenya, acknowledging the supremacy of the Almighty God of all creation, honoring those who heroically struggled to bring freedom, proud of our ethnic and cultural and religious diversity, respectful of the environment, committed to nurturing, protecting, and the well-being of our individual and family and communities of the nation, recognizing the aspirations of all Kenyans, exercising our sovereign and inalienable right to determine our form of governance, we adopt, enact, and give this constitution to ourselves and to our future generation. Unajua imetoka wapi hiyo, si ndio? That is the preamble of our constitution. But here is what chapter 1 says. All sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya and shall be exercised only in accordance with the constitution. Shall. But here's the interesting part. The people may. Optional. Okay? All right. I have a very wonderful panel here, and I want to thank this gentleman and the lady for joining me and accepting to be part of this conversation. So let me give you a moment to introduce yourself, or just to make your opening remarks, really opening remarks, because I have done the introduction. And as you give us your opening remarks, start by answering this question. We are here, this is part of the precursor to the first anniversary of June 25th. What does this anniversary mean for you? Let me start with you, Collins. What does this anniversary mean for you?
Thank you, Sakwa. I'm Ouma Don Collins from Civic Voices again. Reflecting upon the Mandamano that happened last year. For me, it's a lot of things. I don't know if that can be compressed in one statement. But out of those many things, let me pick just a bit of it. That it is a true reflection of the chapter 1 that you have just read. We the people. And a full embodiment of it. And basically evidence of what can be achieved if we think differently as a people. And that means everything to me in this space. Yeah.
Thank you. Stella?
So for me, I'll pick up from what Don has said. June 25th, 2024 is and was a reminder that the work that we do by going to the streets, by using our digital platforms to voice our concerns, actually work. Because what we are seeing now, and the police and hooligans hired by people in positions of power, that's happening because they see the power of organizing. And so June 25th and all the other protests that have happened in this country serve as reminders that power has to be checked, and nobody is more important than the people of Kenya, than the citizens. So we the people shall mandatory hold people in power to account. And it's not optional, it's not a request, it's a duty. It's a civic duty. Yeah.
Thank you. Nick?
For me, June 25th is more than just a date. I feel like it signifies, first of all, the power of the digital space. As someone who's into that space, as someone who's very, very interested in the digital space, it shows how much the media can be used to actually harness for good. We can harness good energy from the digital space. It also shows us that there's nothing like age limits to taking up power. There's nothing like age limits to making change. There's nothing like age limits to running governments or getting your point across. We've come to a time where we can not only be seen, but we have to be heard. So that's the main takeaway from June 25th, that we were seen, now we want to be heard.
Exactly. Wow, wonderful, wonderful place to begin, all of you. Thank you. I want to start with you, Stella. If you look at June 25th and the months that have followed, the 12 months that have followed, we have seen not just young people, but most importantly and significantly, young women placed at the center of changing the state of the nation. And if we compare with the previous liberations, the first liberation struggle, the second one, and the third one, it was mostly men, older men, there were only very few women who are not young women, Wangare Maathai, Martha Karua, Phoebe Asio. What does it say to us that today there are more younger women at the forefront?
I think it shows that the future is bright. The future is female. And so, and first I want to say and acknowledge that women have always played a key role in the liberation movement. And the patriarchy, which must be defeated in all its forms, has lied to us that women were taking a back seat. So they're not documented, and that's why we need to document more. And the stories that are told are not told of the role that women played. I read a book a long time ago by Muthoni Likimani called Password, and she talks about the role of women in so many things, even in tactics about where to hide, providing food, even freedom fighters. Field Marshal, for instance, was a freedom fighter. But now, and I wrote an article last year celebrating young women, young sheroes that have fought for this country and continue to fight. What we are seeing now is a lot of efforts that have been happening since way back, and young women continue to rise. Young women were at the forefront of organizing the Reject Finance Bill last year. Young women organized the End Femicide protests that were happening across the country, not just in Nairobi. And young women continue to organize. Haven't we seen young women organize here? They're the ones registering at the table. Our MC is a lady. The ladies that have organized this event, I know Jerry is here. Marion is here. Our organization at Imagine Leaders Foundation is funded by a woman. So women have always been there, and I would like us to see women more. And that is why we must say no to femicide. That's why we must say no to patriarchal norms that make fun and sexualize women, and start to see women as the real change makers at the forefront of change.
Thank you very much. And for anyone who loves to read, Muthoni Likimani's books are quite an eye-opener, challenging the history that we have known, or rather the history that has been given to us with a lot of editing to it. Nick, today a typical 19-year-old is concerned about where they will go for the next hangout, concerned about what will happen to their grade at the next exam. But you're here, you've been in the streets, you're pushing activism. Why does this matter to you?
It matters a lot to me because I'm still going to be in the country. And I think I'm going to live a bit more, considering the age. So if the country goes bad now, I will inherit a very, very bad society. I want my kids to learn and live here peacefully. You know, even when I left the house today morning and I told my mom I'm going to come here, she told me one thing: Nick, mind what you say, because you know how things are tough out there. And I'd want to never tell these words to my kids. I want them to go out there. I want them to express themselves. I want them to know that there's nothing like an age limit to what they can do. So to me, 19 is nothing. 19 is nothing, because at the end of the day, if the country is bad, I will also inherit a very, very bad country. And I want the country to be safe for me, for my business, and for my kids.
Collins, I want to thank you. We can appreciate Nick. Collins, I want to take you back in history. And I'll take you to Nigeria and South Africa. In, I think, October of 1995, the famous Ogoni 9 were found guilty by the military rule of General Sani Abacha and executed. One of the Ogoni 9 was Ken Saro-Wiwa. Why? Because he was fighting for his people's rights against multinational corporations like Shell. This week, the government of President Bola Tinubu pardoned all the Ogoni 9 posthumously and gave them state honors. Let's cross over to the south. In 1976, June 16th, a group of young men, mostly women, take to the streets protesting against the system of education, saying that black children were getting inferior education compared to the white students. And many of them, in their thousands, were killed by police at that time, giving us the Day of the African Child. If you put those two events in parallel to June 25th, and if you compare now with the liberation struggle that we have been to, do you think that the young people are finally taking their space?
I would say a big yes. They are finally taking their space. Look at all those examples you have given. All those people were fighting not against 1 million people. They are fighting against a handful of people who are cowards, who don't know how to run the government, and who think that anybody who speaks ill or who speaks the truth against the ills that are happening in government are their enemies, instead of looking at them as opportunities to improve. So it's a history of mediocre humans who have been running our states, who have been very intolerable to bright minds. Now, putting that against what is happening today, even look at even the Kenyan history, as even given the history of Nigeria, South Africa. Look at even the Kenyan history. What happened in 1990, the Saba Saba movement. There are young people who led the demonstrations in the street. Even after the people who planned the demonstration could not get to the street, the other young people went to the street. Look at what happened during that time. More than 200 people were killed on the streets, thousands injured. Right? Because young people who saw the country differently were not given an opportunity to express the new ideas that should drive their nations forward. So it's a common pattern of mediocre people who have held into state power, pushing back against progressive ideas that threaten their existence, because they know that if those ideas are given space to be implemented, they will no longer be part of the history of that country. They'll be wiped off to such leadership because they do no longer belong. And sometimes as poets we look at that, maybe that's the advantage of death, that mediocre ideas should die so that then progressive ideas should take space.
All right.
But sometimes if these mediocre ideas refuse to die, we must kill them so that then the new ideas can take space. And that is why activism is very important. If activism is not there, because only a few people do that, the society cannot see what is possible.
All right.
And that's what the major role of activism in our society, that it paints the picture of a possibility,
Yes.
of a better world. So then the people can follow through, put the energy, and make it,
All right.
a reality.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me stay with you and ask this question. And after this question, I am coming to the audience with one question to get 2 or 3 comments. If we look back, and this question is for all of you, if you look back at Kenya's history, what you referenced 1990, the Saba Saba, but what other defining moments have shaped political participation and activism and since independence? Both political participation in general, but also by the young people. What other defining moments come to mind?
I'll start with the 1990 Saba Saba, the 1992 one, come to 1997, come to 1999, and come to 2002, where now like-minded people came together now to put the history of the dictator to rest. One of the most significant, and this even as if Stella even speaks about, the involvement of women in all this struggle. The 1997 demonstration that was organized by the late professor, was a professor environmentalist, Wangari Mathenge, with the help of Kinanjoya, moving a demonstration together with wives of those people who had been, what did the police do? They stripped the women naked, they clobbered them, they jailed them, they tear gassed them. It was terrible. Mothers. It was bad. But you see, you even wonder if it has to go to an extreme before something good can be imagined. Because after all those changing points in the history of Kenya, a new thing happens that even as you sit in reflection, it didn't have to take such level of death or loss for a good thing to happen.
All right. Let's take Stella. What defining moments do you remember from the first liberation in the 60s?
Yeah. I actually want to start from where we are and recent history, because, and one of the key figures in Kenya that we have in terms of defining Kenya's protests and movements is Wangari Maathai. But for me, I am more interested in helping young people also relate to the key figures that are now part of our history. Even what happened last year is part of our history. And one of them is Mercy, who stood up and called out Uasin Gishu county government looters or greedy leaders when they embezzled all the funds for the scholarship. And I think she sparked something. She sparked a movement amongst young people. And for the very first time, we started to see younger people, Gen Zs, younger people starting to see, oh, by the way, I can actually do that. And we need to call out people. Then months later, we have the femicide march. And again, we see more young people coming out, and it's actually organized by young people. That, I think, was very, very much a defining moment. My dress, my choice, when I was in campus myself, I had never, ever gone to such a protest before. I was only going to the UN protest where we are just fighting against Sonu or, waiting for elections or help, But my dress, my choice was a countrywide conversation, and for the very first time, women and people who care about women were saying, enough is enough. I don't care what you think about my dressing. I will wear what I want to wear. And again, that was a very much defining moment. I think of Shakira last year when she stood up to the police and said, I'm not moving. It's my right to protest. That too was a key defining moment. Way back, Mother Karua walking out of President Moi and saying, no, I'm not agreeing with what you're saying. So there are so many points in history that define what we do now. But I still insist that we need to start having conversations about moments in history of key figures that are alive today, that were there in last year's protest, even those that were highlighted in the BBC documentary, saying their names and helping young people start to relate with those ones that they saw last year on the street is very important. The guy, Boniface, for instance, and all the young people that have died in the recent weeks, again, those two are key figures in our history. So it's important to also highlight those, even as we highlight the 90s and the 60s and the 50s. And I have to shout out Muthoni Likimani, who has really documented so many stories about the role of women in fighting for Kenya's freedom.
Thank you. And thank you for reminding us that we have heroes who show up every day like ordinary people, and we need to honor them in their respective ways. Nick, any defining moments that help you to give you impetus to continue advancing the movement?
When names like Rex Masai are mentioned, I mean, that strikes something in you. That's a very recent example. You don't even have to go back to the 70s. You don't have to go back to the 90s. We just say a recent name, that sparks something. Albert Ojwang sparked something in you, even right now. And we can use it as recent examples. Because, back then in history, the ones who had access to the media are the ones who wrote history, essentially, because they're the ones who had the records and everything. But right now, you cannot lie because there is X. The people can create a whole timeline of how everything happened from scratch. We have 3D software where they can scan every single police officer. So for me, I like basing my arguments on things I personally know, 100%, with very verified information, instead of even going back to history. But you can always go back to history, and I feel like Kenya has always been in a struggle. From the 60s where we were fighting for democracy, to the 80s when we were fighting for multipartism, to when the 2000s we were fighting for constitutional reforms, 2010 with the new constitution, with now the elections, 2007. So we've always been fighting something, and right now we are fighting for accountability. We're not even fighting for democracy anymore. It's so sad that we had to fight for democracy from the white people who never got to understand us. But now we are fighting for things from our very own people. And it's very sad. We're just fighting for accountability. Just tell us what we're doing. Just don't give us empty promises. And I feel like that's a very easy thing to do, because when you tell people you're going to do something, just follow up to them. That now we have everything, and we can actually follow you up. We can see that the budget's being given out every day, but very little to no development happening. So I feel like Kenya has always been a struggle, and it's very sad that we are fighting for our own rights from our very own people.
Right. Thank you. When you talk about budgets, it's interesting. We are about 10 days to the end of this financial year, but the executive submitted a supplementary budget. And in that supplementary budget, State House alone got about 34 billion to spend in 10 days. Interesting stuff. I want to move the microphone to you. So I don't know if there's a way someone can help you to help me get the mic to the people. And the question I am asking the people, these defining moments of history that you've had here and the ones you know, and history includes Albert Ojwang, history includes Boniface Karaoke, history includes Hanifa. History, as they have said, is not the 60s and the 90s only. It is as recent as last Tuesday. How do those defining moments give you the reason to keep showing up every day? I want the mic to just go random. Anyone there? I'm going to pick someone. Yeah, there's a hand here. What do those names mean to you, and why? How do they encourage you to keep showing up?
Hi. My name is Caroline Morote, and am I the drama? Okay. It's seeing that you're not alone in the thing that you believe in, seeing that there's people who haven't lost hope, who might be just as fed up and as tired as you are, but completely refuse to give up. So me seeing a bunch of people in the streets, June 25 was my birthday, so that is a super defining moment, will forever be. And understanding that there's people, the 60s, 90s, 70s, who came before me, who were fighting for similar things, and lived to tell the tales, some unfortunately didn't, tells me that there's always a reason to fight. And the fact that I am able to enjoy a level of democracy and freedom that I'm enjoying currently because somebody chose to be inconvenienced for what was rightfully theirs, but chose to go out and inconvenience themselves, get hurt, get arrested, maybe a bad reputation, then why not? Because I plan to bring a future generation into this world, and I hope to bring a much better Kenya for them with my little action where possible. So that's why those defining moments matter to me. Thank you.
Thank you. There is a gentleman. Can we bring the mic to you to tell us about these defining moments, these names? The gentleman right there on the red haystack. Talk to us. These defining moments, these names of history. What do they mean for you?
Okay, my name is the blacksmith. I'm the blacksmith. I'm an artist. This was just random, but I believe this has been a fight that has been here for many generations. It's been a fight that's been on for more than 400 years now. So the fight has been going on. There have been heroes before us who have been fighting for this, who have been actually fighting for love, because all this is love, essentially, the core of it. So I believe everything has been building up since then, up until now. So we really never know if we have the will to do it. We can actually turn things around this time, and the fire just keeps burning from right now.
All right. If we have the will, and indeed we have to maintain the will. Let me come back to the panel. I'll be coming back to you after the next a few more questions. Let me start with you, Stella, this time round. What makes, if you look here, many Africans in different countries, they look and see Kenya in the last 1 year, and they are shocked, and they wonder whether we are actually a country. Because of the things that happen here, from Tanzania, Majirani, South Africa, Nigeria, everywhere. What makes the young people's movement and activism today different from the generations past?
Well, I think first that we stand because those that came before us didn't stand. We sit because they stood for us. We stand because they crawled. I would give them the biggest credit for that. And another thing would be education, for instance. I know we're going to talk about structural challenges that young people in future will have, one of them being access to education. I think to Sidharao kama Kenyans, the few years that we were able to access education and a big chunk of our population being able to access free education, it definitely made a difference. The other thing is our civic space. Kenya's civic space is a great space, and that's why they're trying to close it up. That's why they're trying to suppress it. That's why they want to tax bundles, for instance, and our access to internet services, because we we have access to those platforms to access information. So there are so many things and so many factors, including our progressive constitution. A lot of countries in Africa are still in their independence constitution era. And so it becomes very hard to even challenge and check power. And so these many factors that we should not take for granted enable us to have the civic liberties and freedoms that we have. And if we are not careful, if we go silent because that's what they want us to do, that's why they're shooting left, right, and center, then we will lose that. We will lose those freedoms because it's our freedoms and our constitutional rights that make us be able to do all these things, that we can run campaigns, that we can even come to this space and talk free of charge and nobody's going to ask us, or if they do, then we can challenge that in a court of law. Yeah.
Thank you. Collins, I want to come to you and with a question before I come to Nick here. Because we are drawing parallels now. What we have seen is an unholy alliance across the region. If you go to South Sudan, the opposition and the civic space is being muzzled every day. In Uganda, there are tales every single day you wake up. They literally have to pass a bill just so Museveni can try civilians in a court martial against the constitution. In Tanzania, I mean, we have seen, and very early in the day, I said that Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan is a terrible tyrant than Magufuli. Her tyranny is veiled in her soft, no pun intended, it is veiled in her soft voice. And we saw what she did to us a few days or weeks ago, and we are happy that Boni is here. Makofi ya Boni watu wangu. And everywhere, if you go to Burundi, there are stories there. In Rwanda, you cannot even identify as an opposition or a civic actor. What is fueling this unholy alliance of the heads of state? The East African community now sounds more like a terror squad.
I think what's fueling it is that the people are now informed. And they can no longer tolerate the mediocrity that is being propagated by the few people who are trying to hold on to the old ways of doing stuff. You see, it even touches on what Stella was talking about and as to how activism is done today. When people talked about the finance bill last year, not only a few people came out in masses because they understand what is going on and they want to be part of that change, right? Just a few years before, only a few people had the guts and the balls to call these people out. When Boniface Mwangi stood during a national holiday, how many people stood with him? It was just one person, yeah? But the voice remained stronger. When Timothy Njoya was clobbered in 1997, he was shouting alone. But today, when one person shouts, we all shout. And that's the fear that the old dogs, have across the country. Because we are in a point of history where things are tipping over. Yeah. And they can't prevent that. So those are desperate, kicks of a dying horse. But that time has come.
Let me add.
And you can't stop it.
Let me add to that real quick. So how do we begin to coalesce as the people of East Africa? How do we coalesce around each other and build or create a people's jumuiya?
My thinking is that we have to pull together towards a common purpose, right? When that common purpose is not there, there will be infiltration, and there has always been in history, where some people come in to take advantage of a cause, right? But if we, in this generation, identify that common cause, and everyone then is able to plug in their own talent and power and all that, that movement will be so strong that nothing can stop it. Right. So it's about just building that common objective that this is where we are headed, and everybody should push towards that direction.
All right. I'm trying to run fast before the rains get here with us, that we get as much as we can. Nick, the young people, as we have said, repeated here on this panel, are more active today than, or visibly active than in generations past. Do you think that they are more effective, they are more organized, that the digital is playing a bigger role? Is there more that can be done for them to deliver or achieve a lot more?
Yeah. I think we're more organized. I think we have more influence because social media, there's so many users on social media. I mean, you can compare us to 1963, where for us to send a notice of a mandamano, maybe we'd have to send a letter and it would have to take 1 month before it gets there. And the messenger would be shot before it even gets there. Anyways, so right now I can just easily send a message to someone in Meru, someone in Kirinyaga, someone in Turkana. We can always come together. The same way it is as easy for us to send money across the country, it is also very, very easy for us to even print banners. Right now I can send a message for someone in Nyeri to go print a banner. Back in the day, all the banners have to be printed in Nairobi, then they are taken to Nyeri. So right now we are more effective, we are more organized, and for the how we can increase our influence is, first of all, being very, very objective. If we be objective, that's the only way this is going to work. Because if we're not objective, there's a lot of vulnerability. The upcoming politicians who will see there's mandamano going in, push their agendas a bit, and we take them into power. Remember, some of these people upcoming, it's not that they're not bad. They're not good. It's just that they've not been given a platform to do evil. And they will come hijack the mandamanos, and they will come and they will go into power. And then 2027, now past 2027 to be now 2028, and they will go back. Wow, we did the same mistake that we did. Yeah. So we start now mandamano again. How long will we stay in mandamano? Because remember, it's also affecting businesses. Okay, we will fight as long as we have to, but let's be very, very objective. If we're standing up for accountability, let's be accountable ourselves. If you're showing up to mandamano and you are condemning politicians who are stealing, don't go and steal someone's shop. Right. Because you saw how people looted someone's laptop business. You see? I mean, right. If you're really fighting against the politicians, why are you stealing against an innocent Kenyan who has not robbed, who has not stolen from everyone, who's paying taxes to go on that road that you're standing on? So if we become objective and we clearly state what we are fighting for, such that anyone who does not stand with what we are fighting for is identified among the crowd, then that's how we are going to make our protest effective.
Excellent. Let me start with you, Stella, on this next question, and then I bring the mic back to you, and I want to get 2 or 3 more people on my next question. There's often, Stella, a disconnect between youth movements and formal politics. In your observation and practice, why do you think that many young activists have not been, a few of them have, but many of them have still stepped back when it comes to engaging with direct electoral processes, especially running for office?
For a number of reasons. First of all, young activists and activists in general are fighting against structures, structural systems that don't serve us anymore. And political parties are structures. And a lot of political parties, like in Kenya, are very much colonial still, even if they were founded after we gained our independence. And that too is debatable. Yeah. And so both exist in spaces that serve both. Like we need movements, and we also need political parties that work. Yeah. So we must not force young activists to only take part or participate in political processes through political parties. Yeah. And it's also another chance for people to start new parties or join more progressive parties. But the reason why they struggle is because the way political parties run, and most times, especially in Kenya, is that they're founded around an individual. Yes. Most times men, most times old men. Of course, a young person, a young woman, a progressive young person will not survive or be okay operating in such a system. Right. And so the question should be, how can these two work together, especially how can progressive movements and progressive political parties work together to bring about change? And how can political parties also be prepared to take criticism positively? Because they keep telling us that we also don't like to be criticized. But yeah, how do those two work together to be more progressive and be more pro-change, more pro-democracy? But we don't have to always expect that young activists must do well in political parties, which are very structural, very colonial, very non-progressive, male-dominated, patriarchal, things that do not serve us in today's day and age.
All right. I want to ask you a question to the audience. Have you ever considered running for office? What keeps holding you back, or what would hold you back from running for office? And as you think about that answer, I want to read for you something from Sam Gishuru. Sam Gishuru is a techpreneur in this country. Many of you would know him. And this is what he said yesterday. I've never considered politics until now. This government must be falling spectacularly for me to even think about it. That is Sam Gishuru yesterday. Have you gotten to the point of saying, wacha basata mimi niende, I run for office. What keeps holding you back? Just 30 seconds each. Let's take one here, and then I will take one lady somewhere there or somewhere this side. Quick, yes.
Hello, good people. My name is Mgandi. Yes, I have, both internally and also from, friends. I would say external pressure from friends and people within, or rather from my ward. And I'm privileged to have my ward mate with me here today. But I think the one thing that has been really holding me back is looking into how the system is flawed. The expectation from the people and the system itself. I think that there's a lot. As much as we're talking about the system, we also need to look into what expectations and pressures do we give politicians.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
We give expectations of them giving us handouts instead of setting policies and setting structures.
Thank you.
So that's the one thing that has been really holding me back.
Thank you. Any lady there? Before I come to my last question, the Rains are already here with us. Marion, you can guide us how we wrap this up with the Rains. Any ladies? Give a random lady there to tell us if they've ever considered running for office, what keeps holding them back?
Campaign money.
Those are the structural barriers. There's someone here? Yeah, there's a hand here. Have you ever thought of running for office? What keeps holding you back? Then I come to the last question. And
Hi.
Get some. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I have. And what stops me, like you said, campaign funding. Second, I feel like I'll need a mentor to go because I don't know how to go about it. And the third thing is people say politics is a dirty game. And I always feel like I don't want to play dirty. So how can I armor myself against that?
Hapo kwa mentor and how to armor yourself, go on and Google and search for Emerging Leaders Foundation and let's have a conversation. Let me ask you the last question, hopefully before the rains get to us. As we head into 2027, I'll just, you answer the question as you give us your parting shot. As we head into 2027, for the last 12 months, we have somewhat sustained the fire and the power. How do we keep this alive and active and red hot to the ballot?
I think the answer for me is, as Kenyans, let's stop betraying ourselves, right? Because we go to the streets to agitate for those changes. But when the good people come to the ballot, we go back to our tribal cocoons. So we keep betraying ourselves, then we suffer the consequence of that betrayal.
All right.
For how long?
Okay.
Can we be true to ourselves? When we're saying speak true to power, let's also speak true to ourselves. That's where the change will start from.
Thank you. You're closing your parting
That's
shot?
my parting
That's
shot.
your parting shot. Stella, how do we sustain this to 10th of August, 2027?
By first being true to ourselves and knowing that even if you leave Kenya, you can't leave Kenya forever. And your whole family can also not leave. So I do see why most Kenyans want to leave to other countries. But this is our home, and we must protect our home. And by the way, we are losing so much money to visa applications, and that's one of the systemic issues that we need to fight. We pay so much money for visas. We don't even get those visas. We don't ask questions, and we still prefer those countries. Those countries sometimes are part of our problems. So we need to value our home and fight for it. And we don't know what the future holds, but we know how we can give hope. And giving hope is by showing up like we've done today.
And that's your closing talk, or you?
Yes, that's my
okay.
closing.
Thank you. Nick?
My parting shot would be, as Kenyans, we really need to set our minds. We really need to decide. Because when a poor man comes to ask us for a vote, we say, this man is poor. Once he goes there, he will steal from us. When a rich man comes, they will say, this rich man has rich friends. He will steal money to enrich himself. When someone has a very, very good agenda, we normally come and fight them. Someone comes up today, we fight them. And then we end up defending those politicians. We end up showing up to the rallies. As Kenyans, we really need to set our minds. If we are condemning corruption, let's not be corrupt ourselves. Let's not even fund it. Let's not even fuel it. If all the police officers today decided not to take bribes, or if all Kenyans decided not to give out bribes, then there'll be no one to take bribes. And that's one way to kill corruption. You see, so we really need to set our minds. We need to decide on how we're going to go forward. We make up our minds on who we want and why we want them.
Thank you very much, Colin, Stella, and Nick. And that is all the time I had this afternoon. As we end, I want to thank you for participating. And as we sustain this movement towards 2027, 2 things you can do. Keep showing up anywhere where we, the people, are supposed to be, show up. Secondly, find yourself a good candidate. Support that candidate in every way that you can. My name is Sakwa. Thank you for tuning in.